Chicago. A city that never sleeps, where the hum of traffic and the flicker of neon lights have a rhythm all their own. It was on a bitterly cold night, when snowflakes clung to the windshields of parked cars and the L train screeched its metallic lullaby above empty streets, that a voice cut through the routine noise of emergency dispatchers. It wasn't a scream for help. It wasn't the panicked cry of someone watching a crime unfold. No, it was the calm, steady tone of a man confessing to something so unimaginable, so precise in its delivery, that the dispatcher at first thought it had to be a prank. "This is not a joke," the man said, his voice even, like he was reading a grocery list. "I have killed 12 people." The dispatcher froze. Training told her to stay composed, to ask questions, to extract information without betraying fear. But the tone, the way he spoke, made her chest tighten. He wasn't drunk. He wasn't hysterical. He was deliberate. "Where are you right now, sir?" "You'll find me here. But not for long." And then the line went dead. Police rushed to the location traced from the call. A narrow apartment off a dimly lit street on the south side. The kind of place you pass 100 times without ever noticing. The kind of place you don't remember until it suddenly matters. They expected a man waiting, maybe even still holding the phone, hands in the air, ready to surrender. Instead, they found nothing. No man. No shadow lurking in the hallway. Just a phone left dangling from its cord, swinging gently like a pendulum. On the table beside it sat a tape recorder, still humming with static, and a yellow legal pad covered in names. Names of people who, as far as anyone could tell, were alive. For now. The officers looked at each other, silent in the weight of the discovery. Because there are crimes that shock you in the moment, blood on the carpet, a body in an alley, and then there are crimes that don't scream. They whisper. Crimes that tell you the worst is still coming. And that's what that list was. A whisper. The tape recorder, when played, revealed the same voice as the 911 call, repeating the confession. "I have killed 12 people. I will kill again." Over and over, almost like he wanted to etch the words into the very walls of the city. At first, detectives thought it had to be a hoax. Chicago had seen plenty of those, false bomb threats, fake emergency calls, people chasing their 5 minutes of fame. But 3 days later, the whisper turned into a scream. One of the names on the list turned up dead. A middle-aged man, found slumped in his car outside a convenience store, no sign of robbery, no clear motive. Just gone. And when detectives matched his name to the legal pad, the weight of what they were dealing with sank in. The confession wasn't a bluff. It was a roadmap. Word leaked to the press. The 9/11 killer, they called him. Headlines blared across Chicago newspapers and TV screens. Who is the man behind the call? How many will die next? And just like that, the city changed. Parents held their kids closer. Commuters eyed each other suspiciously on the L train. Bars that once rang with laughter emptied earlier than usual. Chicago had lived through gang wars, mobsters, even notorious serial killers of the past, but there was something different about this one. Something colder. Because he wanted to be known. He wanted to be heard. And yet, he wanted to remain unseen. Psychologists weighed in on the evening news, each with their theories. Some said the killer was narcissistic, craving the spotlight. Others believed it was deeper, a punishment game, a man testing the limits of control, taunting both police and public with his ability to vanish. What kind of mind calls 911 to confess, knowing the line is recorded, knowing the system will chase him, and yet slips through their fingers as if he was never there? For the families of the victims, those theories didn't matter. All they knew was fear. Because every time the phone rang, every time there was a knock at the door, their hearts raced with the question, am I next? The list, 12 names already claimed, dozens more left, was guarded like a state secret. Detectives wrestled with whether to release it to the public. On one hand, maybe people deserved to know if they were in danger. On the other, mass panic could rip through the city, leaving chaos in its wake. In the end, the list remained locked away, whispered about in police circles but never officially shared. And then came another call. Different dispatcher. Same voice. Same eerie calm. You didn't find me. You never will. But you'll find another name crossed off your list. The dispatcher tried to stall him, tried to keep him talking, but he hung up after 40 seconds. Long enough to plant dread. Short enough to deny clues. Hours later, another body surfaced. Another name crossed off. It wasn't random. The victims didn't share obvious connections, different ages, neighborhoods, occupations. Yet somehow, they were bound together by his invisible thread. Detectives began combing through their pasts, looking for overlaps, schools, workplaces, childhood encounters. Every dead end only fueled the sense of a predator orchestrating something grander, something unseen. The people of Chicago weren't just afraid of being victims. They were afraid of being forgotten. Afraid that if their name was on the list, they would disappear into a story larger than themselves, reduced to a line in a newspaper under the shadow of a man no one could catch. And through it all, he remained invisible. No fingerprints on the recorder. No DNA on the phone. No trace of how he had slipped out of that apartment moments before police stormed in. Some officers swore he had been watching them, maybe even standing on the street as they rushed inside, blending into the crowd. The thought alone chilled them, the idea that the man they were chasing could be standing shoulder to shoulder with them, unremarkable, unnoticed. That's the psychology that burrowed into the city's skin. He wasn't just killing bodies. He was killing trust. He was dismantling the belief that we can see evil coming. Because what if evil doesn't look like a monster? What if it looks like the man buying milk in line behind you, or the neighbor you waved to on the way to work? The FBI was called in, profiling teams dissecting every word of the calls. They noted the cadence, the absence of emotion, the chilling lack of hesitation. This wasn't a man trying to prove his toughness. This wasn't rage spilling over. This was calculation. Control. A man rehearsing his every move, his every word, to script not just his crimes but the fear they would leave behind. And then, something even more sinister emerged. The tape recorder that had been left on the table, it wasn't just looping a confession. On the other side of the tape, buried in minutes of static, investigators discovered faint sounds. Breathing. A clock ticking. Footsteps pacing. As though he had recorded himself waiting, anticipating the police's arrival, savoring the idea of them finding nothing but his shadow. Every clue was a taunt. Every murder, a signature. And the city could do nothing but watch as the list of names grew shorter. At town hall meetings, citizens shouted at officials, demanding answers. Why can't you stop him? Why can't you protect us? And beneath every cry was a deeper fear, that the killer wasn't outside the city, hiding in some dark corner, but right there among them. Maybe in the audience. Maybe in uniform. Maybe even behind the podium. Weeks passed, and each new body felt like a drumbeat in a song of terror. The man wasn't just killing. He was conducting. And Chicago was his orchestra. Journalists speculated endlessly. Was he copying the Zodiac? Was he inspired by infamous killers who had taunted law enforcement before him? Or was he something new, something designed for the age of constant news, where every headline and every whisper online amplified his reach? Because that's the truth that stung the most, in some twisted way, he had become a part of the city's daily life. His voice replayed on the news, his shadow woven into conversations at dinner tables and coffee shops. He was inescapable. And yet, he remained untouchable. Some said he was a ghost. Some said he was a genius. Others whispered that maybe he was more than one person, that the calls and the killings were part of something organized, a cult or a pact. The truth? No one knew. And maybe that was the point. Because fear thrives in uncertainty. The psychology of his terror wasn't in what he did, it was in what he might do next. That's why the city couldn't sleep. That's why parents left lights burning in every room. That's why every ring of a phone made hearts skip. Because he had taken something precious, something invisible but vital, the illusion of safety. And then, one night, another call came in. This one longer than the rest. "You will never understand why I do this," he said. "You think it's about fame. About ego. But it's simpler. I want you to feel what I feel. The silence before the inevitable. The waiting. The knowing. I want the whole city to live in that silence with me." And with that, the line clicked dead. To this day, the 911 killer remains a phantom. His list was never fully decoded. The tape recorder sits locked away as evidence, a relic of a nightmare that tore through Chicago like a winter storm. And somewhere, maybe he's still out there. Watching. Waiting. Listening for the moment when silence becomes unbearable again. Because sometimes the scariest monsters aren't the ones who hide in the dark. They're the ones who walk among us, calm, ordinary, invisible. The ones who make a phone call, and with just a few words, turn an entire city into their prisoner. And the next time your phone rings late at night, ask yourself, what if the voice on the other end isn't asking for help, but confessing? What if the next name on his list is yours?